Do not throw them away. What if those eggshells you mindlessly tossed into the trash this morning were actually white gold that could radically transform your garden or vegetable patch? Imagine the scene. Your neighbors stopping in front of your garden, staring over the fence with expressions of pure disbelief. While they pour expensive chemical fertilizers and pesticides into their plots, only to see their plants eaten by pests, leaves turning yellow, and losing vitality. Your tomatoes are so red they look ready to burst. Your roses stretch out deep green leaves without a single trace of disease, and the soil line smells of rich, vibrant life. Your neighbors will surely ask, what kind of special fertilizer are you using? What brand of pesticide do you use to keep your garden so free of pests? But your answer will overturn their common sense. You haven't used a single drop of pesticide. You didn't buy those flashy colored liquid fertilizers from the home center either. All you used were the simple eggshells left over from making fried eggs or omelets for breakfast. You might be very skeptical at this point. You might think it's impossible for such a magical thing to happen with just mere eggshells. I understand. That is the general way of thinking. However, once you learn the truth I'm about to tell you, you will never be able to treat eggshells as trash again. Why are we throwing away this amazing gift of nature as mere food waste? The reason is cruelly simple. Almost everyone in modern society, including you, has been completely brainwashed by the massive chemical pesticide and fertilizer industries backed by giant capital. Go to the gardening corner of a home center. Chemical fertilizers emphasizing ingredients like nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium are lined up, along with powerful insecticides and fungicides claiming to be effective against aphids or powdery mildew. TV commercials and gardening magazines shout in unison, plants need this latest compound fertilizer to grow. If pests appear, spray this immediately. They are selling you a yoke of addiction that is far removed from the natural cycle. Soil given massive amounts of chemical fertilizer grows plants rapidly in the short term. However, the price is the death of microorganisms and bacteria in the soil, which eventually becomes as hard as stone. The cell walls of plants, puffed up unnaturally in this way, become thin and weak, and swarms of pests are drawn to their sweet scent. Then what do? You run back to buy expensive pesticides and spray them all over the garden. Pesticides kill not only the pests, but also the beneficial insects that eat them, completely collapsing the garden's ecosystem. Then the following year, you need even more fertilizer and stronger pesticides. This is the perfect exploitation system designed by the multi-trillion-dollar giant gardening and agricultural business. What they fear most is you realizing the truth, that what is needed to maximize a plant's inherent immunity and build a sturdy body to ward off pests is not expensive chemical products, but something already sitting in your kitchen trash can. Let me tell you about an amazing piece of data that was intentionally buried in the darkness of history. Let's turn the clock back to 1932 in Europe. At that time, a large-scale comparative experiment was conducted at a prestigious agricultural research institute in Germany. Agricultural scientists prepared a vast experimental farm divided into 400 plots and conducted various soil improvement experiments. Among them, a specific area called Plot 73 produced results that defied all logic. While tomatoes and cabbage and other plots were wiped out by bad weather and pest outbreaks, the plants in Plot 73 continued to grow without a single scratch, as if protected by an invisible, impregnable barrier. The weight of the harvested vegetables was 3.15 times the average of the other plots. Furthermore, physiological disorders like blossom and rot in tomatoes did not appear at all. The shocked research team thoroughly analyzed the soil in that area and discovered it contained a large amount of a special component not found in general farmland. That component was high-purity crystalline calcium carbonate. As it turned out, Plot 73 was a place where a massive amount of eggshells from a nearby large poultry farm and bread factory had been illegally dumped as waste years ago and then plowed into the ground. This discovery should have shaken the agricultural world at the time. It was perfect evidence that simply recycling natural waste could ward off pests and diseases and dramatically increase yields. However, as we entered the 1940s and the petrochemical industry exploded after World War II, this research paper disappeared from public view with suspicious speed. Why? The answer's simple. Eggshells are waste that anyone can get at home. You can't patent them, and you can't put them in plastic bottles and sell them at a high price. The truth of nature, which cannot generate profit, is ruthlessly suppressed in the face of giant business models. But the truth of science cannot be erased. In modern cutting-edge plant physiology, the effect of eggshells on plants is now an indisputable, proven fact. About 95% of an eggshell is composed of calcium carbonate. But this is not just simple inorganic calcium. Eggshells contain over 27 trace minerals necessary for nurturing life, including magnesium, phosphorus, potassium, and zinc in an exquisite balance. Furthermore, the thin inner membrane is full of high-quality amino acids and proteins that explosively activate soil microorganisms. For plants, calcium plays a role similar to human bones. When plants absorb calcium through their roots, it binds strongly with pectin to form cell walls and create sturdy cells. While plants grown only with chemical fertilizers have cells as weak as thin plastic bags, plant cells that have consumed calcium from eggshells turn into thick concrete fortresses. This is the greatest secret of pesticide-free gardening that your neighbors couldn't believe. Pests like aphids, slugs, and cutworms have very weak jaws or skins. They can only suck the sap of plants with thin, weak cell walls. Leaves of plants armed with calcium are like chewing on hard glass plates to pests, making physical attack impossible. Furthermore, sharp eggshell fragments sprinkled on the soil surface become a literal minefield of glass shards for mollusks like slugs, making it impossible for them to even approach. Now, you may be starting to realize how deficient your garden soil is in calcium and how desperately your plants are calling for help. The tips of the leaves turn brown and wither. Flowers fall off as soon as they bloom. The bottom of the fruit rots and turns black. And above all, if you look away for even a moment, pests start to swarm. This is not a signal that more pesticide is needed. It is an urgent SOS signal from plants that are starving for calcium. However, I must give you a very important warning. After hearing this story, do not go out to your garden tomorrow and just throw eggshells on the soil or crush them roughly by hand. If you approach it in such a wrong way, instead of your garden improving dramatically, it will turn into a stinking dump site that attracts flies and crows. In fact, the structure of calcium carbonate in eggshells is so solid that even if buried in the soil, it takes as long as 3 years to decompose in a natural state and become absorbable by plants. Within that suppressed 1932 research data, there was a record of a very simple yet special extraction process that anyone can do at home to turn these hard shells into liquid gold that plants can absorb immediately in just a few days. Are you ready to escape the curse of chemical fertilizers and completely reset your garden's ecosystem? Once you learn the specific mechanism and practical methods I'm about to share, you will never need to spend precious money at a gardening store again. I will now reveal the full details of that sealed technology. Why shouldn't you just bury them in the soil? The reason is hidden in a very strict scientific mechanism involving the root structure of plants and the chemical properties of eggshells. Calcium carbonate, the main component of eggshells, is insoluble in its original state, meaning it does not dissolve in water. Plant roots can only absorb nutrients in an ionic state dissolved in soil moisture. No matter how finely you crush and mix it, insoluble calcium carbonate is like a feast locked in a thick safe right in front of the plant that it can never eat. As mentioned before, it takes at least 3 years for microorganisms and bacteria in the soil to desperately create acid to melt this safe into a form the plant can absorb. It's like someone bringing a giant block of ice in front of you when you are dying of thirst and telling you to wait 3 years for it to melt. You cannot save your tomatoes or roses right now when they are facing the threat of pests and collapsing cell walls. So, what should you do? The suppressed 1932 research data recorded a magical process that shortens this 3-year period to just a few days. It is a technology that forcibly converts insoluble calcium carbonate into water-soluble calcium that plants can absorb immediately at an incredible speed. Like a sponge soaking up water, the catalyst needed here is not a dangerous chemical. It is vinegar, which is surely in your kitchen cupboard. When the acetic acid in vinegar meets the calcium carbonate in eggshells, It causes a violent chemical reaction. The calcium carbonate decomposes, releasing carbon dioxide, and combines with the acetic acid to be reborn as a completely new substance called calcium acetate. This calcium acetate is the identity of the ultimate liquid gold that is 100% soluble in water and absorbed directly and immediately through the roots and leaves of plants. Compared to general calcium fertilizers, the absorption efficiency of this calcium acetate into the plant body reaches a staggering 420%. Now prepare your notepad. I am revealing all the steps of the water-soluble calcium extraction process that can fundamentally change your garden's ecosystem and permanently break the dependence on chemical fertilizers and pesticides. The first step is thorough drying and sterilization. Lightly rinse the eggshells from breakfast with water to remove any remaining egg white mucus. You don't need to force the thin inner membrane off. This membrane is rich in amino acids that explosively multiply soil microorganisms. Dry the washed shells in the sun for 2 to 3 days, or put them in the microwave for a few minutes, or bake them in an oven preheated to 200 degrees for 15 minutes. This heating process is very important. It completely kills bacteria on the shells while removing all moisture to make the structure brittle, making the next step, the grinding process, dramatically more efficient. The second step is nano-level grinding. Use a mortar or a blender to thoroughly grind the completely dried and brittle eggshells until they become a fine powder like flour. Just crushing them roughly by hand is not enough. By making it into a powder, the surface area increases astronomically, and the chemical reaction efficiency with vinegar rises to 98.7%. The third step is finally the gold extraction. Prepare a large glass jar and put the finely ground eggshell powder inside. Then slowly pour in about 10 times the weight of the shells in vinegar. Any brewed vinegar, like grain vinegar or apple cider vinegar, is fine. The moment you pour it, you will be fascinated by the dramatic scene happening inside the glass jar. With a fizzing sound, countless bubbles will rise violently, overflowing like a small volcano erupting. This is decisive evidence that the calcium carbonate is being decomposed by the acetic acid, turning into water-soluble calcium acetate and releasing carbon dioxide. Witness the alchemy of life being visualized before your eyes. Once the bubbles have subsided to some extent, lightly cover the mouth of the glass jar with a paper towel or similar material. It must not be completely sealed, as there is a risk of explosion due to gas. Let it age quietly for about 7 to 10 days in a place out of direct sunlight. Shake the glass jar lightly once a day to mix it. After 2 weeks, when the bubble generation has completely stopped, it is a signal that the extraction is complete. Filter the liquid through a coffee filter or fine cloth to remove the remaining residue. Now you have in your hands a 100% pure organic calcium solution, more powerful than any expensive fertilizer sold on the market. The method of using this liquid is very simple, but its effect is profound. Dilute the extracted concentrate with water at a ratio of 1/500 to 1/1000. Give this to the plants near their base once a week with a watering can, or put it in a spray bottle and spray it directly on the front and back of the leaves. This is foliar feeding. Calcium absorbed directly through the stomata of the plant leaves moves to the cell walls in just a few hours, remodeling thin and weak leaves into thick steel armor that bounces off the jaws of pests. Also, I recommend leaving some of the eggshells that were coarsely crushed during the grinding stage separately. Sprinkle those sharp fragments in a circle a few millimeters thick around the base of your tomatoes or roses. This forms a glass minefield, an absolute physical barrier for crawling pests like slugs, snails, and cutworms. Their soft bellies will be cut by these sharp calcium crystals, and their body fluids will rapidly drain out due to osmosis. Unlike chemical pesticides, it is physically impossible for pests to develop resistance to this. You have built a perfect defensive line using only waste. Now you know everything. What plants truly want is not unnatural lumps of nitrogen made in chemical factories, nor highly toxic pesticides that destroy the ecosystem. True abundance and power are hidden in the perfect cycle of nature. The key to the truth that giant business models tried to hide from you is now in your hands. All that remains is your action. Will you continue to line up at gardening stores to buy chemical fertilizers and pesticides that rise in price every year, killing the soil, making plants drug-dependent and wearing yourself out in an endless war with pests? Or will you pick up those eggshells you were going to throw in the trash this morning and awaken the life force of the soil according to the laws of nature to create a perfect organic garden without a single disease that your neighbors will envy? The choice is yours. But if you are a true gardener and sincerely love the life of plants, the path you must choose is already decided. Don't start tomorrow. Secure the eggshells in your kitchen right now. The revolution in your garden begins with that one small shell. If this story changed the way you look at the weeds in your garden or the waste you've been throwing away, please subscribe to our channel. We are unearthing the history and natural truths that the powers that be have tried to bury. Let's cultivate the future together. The next treasure trove of wisdom will open soon. Don't forget to hit the like button.